Hey, you guys. Welcome to the Cast. I am your host. This is Cassidy Strader. And today we're going to look at Super Wildcard Weekend. First things kind of first, of course, looking at injuries ahead of this weekend. And seeing what the significant ones are. Of course, tomorrow we have two games. Sunday 3, and then Monday, the final game, Bucks Eagles. But looking ahead to tomorrow, Vigor's got a couple of AFC games. I'm going to do my own kind of short take on each of these, and then I'll do an in depth breakdown. So I'm going to go through all of these with just my general take on what is going to happen in these games. Looking to Cleveland visiting Houston. We clearly have Cleveland as what I would say the second hottest team in the AFC and possibly the league. I think the second best overall team could be up to debate amongst the playoff teams. But Cleveland visits Houston. Last week they rested their starters. Flacco got a game off. Houston won last week and with a Jacksonville loss secured their division. Houston has been playing pretty well since CJ Stroud has come back from his concussion. Because of that, I think that Houston will put up somewhat of a fight. It depends on what kind of defense we get out of them. One scare with Cleveland was that cornerback Denzel Ward had rolled his ankle in the week, and people feared that it was going to be a bad injury, but it seems like it's day to day now. So he will play. I think that we're getting a really true test and measuring stick to test CJ Stroud. It will be at home, which will help him tremendously, to be honest. And looking at Cleveland, I think depending on what defense we get from Houston, I think that they're not being able to just, move the ball freely over Houston. Even with that though, I think that their defense is really hard to handle and they have so many good pieces. I'm going to go with Cleveland over Houston with a score of 24-20. I think that Houston is pretty good offensively, and I think that CJ Stroud is a great competitor. So I think it'll be a pretty close game. Moving on to Miami and Kansas City. Miami losing a game against the Bills, thus knocking them out of winning the division and being a late seed in the or a wild card seed in the AFC. Kansas City resting a good amount of players last week and kind of a meaningless game because they had already locked up the third seed. And thinking about that, I think that Kansas City, I I personally think that Miami's defense has been kind of struggling. The other thing that I think about as well is that Miami hasn't done well against winning teams, and they're going to Arrowhead. I think that last week was kind of uncharacteristic of Tua, but I also think that the Bills' defense, seems to be pretty opportunistic. With that being said, I think Kansas City shows that, they're going into the playoffs. They're ready to put the entire kind of ridiculous regular season that they had and show that they're going to be a threat in the playoffs. I still think it'll be pretty close scoring. I don't think Kansas City's going to blow out Miami. I don't think Miami's going to be able to do that much. It is kind of bittersweet with Miami and Tyreek Hill. And he's been saying that already, that his team is better than the Super Bowl winning team of the Chiefs. And I mean, quite possibly so. I think that Miami, has a lot of talent. They just haven't really harnessed it, to be honest with you, in a way that shows they're a truly dominant team against any team. Because it's at Kansas City, and because I think that Kansas City is going to really, show their playoff form, which is always just way better than their regular season. I think they're going to win 28-24 is my prediction. And then moving on to Sunday, we have Pittsburgh visiting Buffalo. I think that this is going to be a very gritty game, possibly snow. It's going to be cold. Buffalo is just known for being one of those super frigid, cold stadiums, and I think that Pittsburgh has a little bit better of a running game than Buffalo does, albeit Buffalo obviously has James Cook, who was one of the top 5 leading rushers this year. And then we have, Pittsburgh that has Najee Harris and I forget their other running back, to be honest with you, that's pretty good as well. And I think in the cold, I think it's just another one of those things too, that you have the faster receiver on Pittsburgh and Pickens. And I think that it's another one of those things that if he just happens to, have a defender slip, have him get a little bit of distance to where there's just no way they're catching up, and he gets a little bit of space, I think that is an advantage. Although I'll say this, depending on the weather, you obviously have Buffalo playing at home. Pittsburgh's used to playing in kind of a cold, frigid environment as well, so they're pretty used to it, and I don't think there's going to be entirely a lot with that, but I think that Buffalo's style, where it's like if it's cold and they're doing kind of this dip and dunk and, trying to tackle guys like Stephon Diggs, I think that it's going to be very, very tough. And I think that Buffalo has kind of proven against the odds that their defense is still very, very rugged. Whereas Pittsburgh, there's been some question marks here and there to me, where there's games where, like I remember the game that Minkah Fitzpatrick came back from injury, and unfortunately they just weren't very good that game, defensively, and it's always kind of odd. But they do have TJ Watt playing, who's just a remarkable player. And I just think that this is going to be an extremely close game. I think that if Allen, is playing the way that he played last week, he's going to have turnovers. And looking at Pittsburgh, they obviously have Mason starting. And he's been doing well, but I don't think he's played as tough a defense as Buffalo these last couple weeks. Seen as the Ravens, they rested a good number of guys when they played them last week. But I'm going to give the game to Buffalo. I think that Pittsburgh has a reasonable shot to win, but I think this game's going to be like 20-17 because of where it's being played, defensive mentality on these teams, and just the fact that I don't think that either quarterback is going to be able to play risk-free or fault-free football where they don't turn the ball over at least once, maybe twice. Moving on to Green Bay visiting Dallas. Of course, my Packers, it was quite insane to me that we made the playoffs. I'm not going to lie. Not because we were winning in the final week, but because of the way that we played against teams like the Buccaneers and Giants, who should have been easy, maybe not easy teams, but teams that we were expected to beat, to be honest with you. And obviously the Buccaneers kind of had a late season resurgence in a way. But Green Bay to Dallas. It's another thing, too, that I guess I didn't mention with Pittsburgh and Buffalo, but no seventh seed has won a single game since they've expanded the playoffs to 7 teams. Because of that, I mean, not because of that, but because it's always such an underdog mentality. And I do like, how the way my Packers have been playing. And I even like the way that the offensive line has been playing, has really stepped it up later in the year. I'm not going to say that they can completely contain Micah Parsons because he is just a freak of a player. But even when we went up against, I guess, Danielle Hunter, who, did amazing this year, we really kind of contained him with like Zach Tom and some other different looks. But obviously, Micah Parsons to me is like a tier above Danielle Hunter at this point, being younger, faster, stronger. But Danielle Hunter is still a pretty good, credible, and to hold him to really kind of nothing that whole game gives me a little bit of hope that we're going to be able to at least do some things to limit Parsons. And that isn't even to mention DeMarcus Lawrence on that team, and their opportunistic defense as well. I think that, it's a great thing that Love has had 18 TDs to like 1 pick. I think maybe that's, what it was before the last game. And if that was the case, then it would be like 20 TDs to 1 pick or something like that. But it's a very, very insane ratio. Like, I don't even think that Rodgers was really that good. Yeah, he had like the 1 year where it was like only 4 picks or whatever else. But it's a good sign to me of Love's growth because he was throwing some terrible picks in the middle of the year. And people were like, this dude is not it. He's not going to be the QB of the future. But thinking about this game and thinking about Green Bay and Dallas, I think that it could essentially become a shootout. I really think that the way that the cornerbacks of Green Bay have been playing lately, even including guys like Ballantyne, who is like arguably that he would be the 5th corner on the roster or something like that, because he would be behind Stokes, Alexander, Keyshawn Nixon, and Ballantyne. But even he's been playing pretty well. And the thing about Dallas to me is that they like to throw it a lot. They really haven't had much of a run game to speak of. Their O-line, I think, is, a little bit more solidified than the Packers with, more veterans there and all-star talent. But, I think this game could easily become somewhat of a shootout where my Packers will, if that's what happens, they'll inevitably fall short. I do think that the Packers have a more well-rounded offense in terms that we can run and pass, and that Dallas has a defense that had some games against the run that were very, very bad. Granted, against the Dolphins, they were very, very good, but I think that was more out of fear than anything, and they ended up losing, against the Dolphins, a few weeks back. But I think that it could end up being a lot closer game than what everyone's going to think. I think that Dallas as well, even though they won every game at home, obviously, their record is, their perfect record on that was based off a bad call by a ref or who knows. I think that this game could easily be it easily could be pretty close, and it's nuts to me how I guess my Packers, and I didn't know this until recently, haven't lost a game at Dallas's stadium since it opened. And the whole dynamic of McCarthy playing against his former team who he won a Super Bowl with, I don't think he's going to really be motivated by that. And I don't think he's really going to instill that into his players. I mean, I think that they're just going to try and play their game, get CeeDee Lamb open, and, you know, try to wreak havoc that way. But my Packers have obviously done well. We did well against Jefferson, where he didn't really do anything a couple weeks ago. DJ Moore didn't really do anything last week. Obviously, it was kind of a lackluster performance by the Bears, and who knows, this could have been down games by either team. But CeeDee Lamb looks like it's kind of the precipient challenge where the Packers got beat by Mike Evans, weeks ago, and it obviously Godwin. And I think that Lamb has really, he's really started to prove that he can be one of the top in this league. He was saying it in the offseason that he was just as good as Jefferson. And don't get me wrong, I think he's on a better offense than Jefferson, where Jefferson is kind of on an island to perform, whereas CD has other parts that are contributing and take a little pressure off of him. But he does, incredible things, and he needs to be accounted for, or he's going to have a 200-yard game. For my prediction, I am going to say Dallas because I think that it's a tough slope to overcome, the way that they're passing the ball. But I think that this game, I think it's going to be pretty high scoring, to be honest with you, and I'm going to predict a 31-28 score in favor of Dallas, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than what they say. They say it's a 7.5-point swing, but who knows? Moving on to Rams Detroit. Now, this to me does scream somewhat of a possible revenge game, because even though Stafford, I'm sure he was appreciative of his time there, he didn't like that he was essentially held hostage there for a couple seasons before they traded him, and that they were like, yeah, we're not trading Stafford, but we're not going to build a team that is going to win around you. And even and the thing is that there's not a lot of players on Detroit that were there when Stafford was there anymore, to be honest with you. They have a very young team, and they've drafted a lot of key pieces in the last few years. And I think that because their pass defense is somewhat suspect, where it's like they did pretty well last week, I think, against the Vikings, and at least limiting them points. But I also think that Hutchinson is really trying to amp it up, and he's really trying to make up for the fact that the defensive backs and their pass coverage it's really not to be desired at all. It makes me worry about whether they'd be able to go deep in the playoffs, to be honest with you. They really need to channel what they did against the Cowboys, because they only really had one major blunder on the huge TD by CD, where it's like this game would have been well in your hands and would have been an easy win besides that. But looking at this, I honestly think Detroit, they're going to be able to score, though, as well, because they do a really good job of dipping and dunking with, Laporta, Amon-Ra, and just all of their pieces. And I don't think that defense is as talented to really limit the Detroit offense on the Rams. And I think that, the fact that it's going to be the first playoff game in Detroit, and the first one in my lifetime, and I'm on the late, near the end of 34 here. I think that I think the Rams can win, but I think that Detroit, they really need to have the crowd involved and that sort of thing. Um, I think this could be the highest scoring game of the weekend very easily. I know I said that Green Bay and Dallas. Is going to be high scoring, but I think this one could even be higher scoring, to be honest with you. I think this game could be a 35 to 31 game or something like that, in favor of Detroit. I think that, these offenses are pretty similar. I don't think they really do deep ball that much on the Rams. But yeah, they're gonna be able to kind of dip and carve. And I mean the only thing to me, barring it being that high scoring, is if there's turnovers. And I think that, the Detroit D line and matching up against Aaron Donald is going to be huge in the run game, even with as good as they are. I think that Aaron Donald he's still just so strong and impactful that he's going to be able to kind of disrupt them there. So I don't even think the run game is going to be free for Detroit, or they're going to be influenced heavily on where Donald is every play on the run plays, which could lead to audibles and possible mistakes if not everyone is on the same page. But yeah, that's my prediction. Going on to Monday night, we kind of have what I call probably the worst game of the weekend, to be honest with you. The way Philadelphia has been playing, it's atrocious to me. And it doesn't seem like this team could, do well in the playoffs. Even if they make it well past this round, they'd have to have a huge turnaround to me. And looking at Tampa Bay, they really kind of settled things in their division. Yes, you won, but it's like you won with a 9-8 record, one game over 500, and it just, doesn't, scream confidence, but they may view it as like, oh, this was a blank slate for us. We can, we're essentially in our control of our own destiny, at least to the first week on a wounded Eagles team that's, I say wounded in terms of like how well they're playing. But I expect Tampa Bay to win, to be honest with you. It is at their stadium, which is loud, hard to play at. And it just seems to me with Philadelphia that there has to be some sort of an internal problem. Like the way that Sirianni has been having his press conference, he's just been completely like a brat. And it's like, dude, this does not instill any sort of confidence that you have kept your cool and you are still a well approached coach to the game. And I mean it's going to be the downfall of the Eagles cuz this really isn't their year. What an insane fall from grace, even worse than Kansas City. Kansas City has had performance issues on the field, but they obviously haven't like lost their cool completely. Like there's been some moments where you're like, oh god, yeah, Mahomes is fuming. But looking at this game, it's hard to predict a score. But I think Tampa Bay, with how bad Philadelphia's pass defense is, I think that they score 31 and then Philadelphia scores like 17 or 20, to be honest. Because to be honest, they have too talented of an offense to just be held to nothing. But the fact is that their defense is going to be just carved alive by Godwin and Evans. And it's like I think that Baker, he's had kind of a down last couple of weeks, but I think that he's going to do just fine in a game like this, being able to extend and throw downfield. But those are my initial picks. I'm going to go and I'm going to look at the injury report for these games. So let me pull this up. I know that my Packers, the worry is for Jair Alexander. Um, But we'll start with Cleveland and Houston here. We have Will Anderson Jr. still kind of questionable. He didn't practice Tuesday or Wednesday, and then Thursday was limited. Obviously today they wouldn't be practicing as they play tomorrow. The only other kind of thing that I'm looking at here on their team, that I'm kind of like, oh, a person that is gonna miss time is, I mean, I really don't see any other sort of injuries with the Texans that, of guys that this week that are gonna be, because they have Jerry Hughes is out with an ankle injury, and that's the only, everyone else is questionable besides Michael Delter. There's a center with an elbow injury. But looking at Cleveland, you got Batonio, he's got rest, and then they say he's got an oblique and knee injury. He was limited on Wednesday, full on Thursday. Amari Cooper, they had him rest, I guess, and he was a full practice Friday. They do say he has a heel injury, but he's gonna be good to go. Um, they do have Garrett here with like a shoulder and a hammy injury, but it's a hard sell to me that he doesn't play. And if he doesn't play, it could be anyone's game, right? And then we do have Denzel Ward, who is full practice on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Thursday was limited. Obviously, if it was really that bad with his or his knee injury, I'm sorry, I said ankle when I made my analysis. His knee injury, we all know that he would not be practicing. But yeah, Grant Delpit is out, and then Cedric Tillman is out. Not really big blows, and then their kicker, I guess, Dustin Hopkins is out. Could affect them, but I'm not really too worried, to be honest with you. They rested Njoku. I'm looking here at all these guys. Greg Newsome had a knee, but he was full yesterday, and yeah, to me, it doesn't really look like there's going to be any injuries that are really going to kill either of these teams, to be honest with you. So, that doesn't really. I think it's going to be a good, clean game between Houston and Cleveland. Looking at Miami and Kansas City. Let's see here. Kansas City, they say L'Jarius Sneed has a calf injury, but he doesn't even have a designation. Donovan Smith with his neck injury, he was limited on Tuesday and Wednesday, but a full on Thursday. So I mean, I'm fully expecting him to go. Obviously with the Dolphins, they don't really have as much of a pass rush, like with Chubb being injured and out for the year. They don't really, to me, have that insane of a pass rush, which I think is one of the things that affects their defense, to be honest with you. But in terms of the rest of these guys, is there anybody else that looks like they might miss time? They list a few guys of interest here, like Nick Bolton, but he was full all week. They list Isaiah Pacheco, but he was full all week. Rashee Rice, full all week. And, they list, I guess, Jawan Taylor as well. One of their opposite tackle, Donovan Smith, but he was full all week. So really nothing on here to me that screams, oh gosh, yeah, we should be worried. I mean, Kadarius Toney is still questionable, I guess, but to me, that doesn't really matter too much. I feel like he's kind of a gadget guy that several other guys can do somewhat the same thing, or they have other things they can do with these other guys that'll do just fine on Kansas City with that offense. Looking at the Dolphins, we've got Raheem Mostert, I guess, limited all week with a knee and ankle injury. He is questionable. Waddle, limited with his ankle injury, questionable for the game. Xavier Howard is out with his foot injury that he suffered not long back. Um, Deshaun Elliott also did not practice all week, and he's questionable. Same with Javon Holland, questionable, did not practice all week. And it says knees on here, so both his knees. That's not a good thing to me. You know, one of their better coverage guys. Tyreek was limited all week. He's going to be good to go. Same with Ramsey. I don't see any reason why these guys would not play, unless it was just an unplayable setback for them. So for this game, a lot of kind of pretty clean where it's like you're not really missing. I mean, the Dolphins are missing obviously Xavier Howard, but I feel like even when him and Ramsey were on the, were playing, their pass defense was still not as great as you would think it would be. Javon Holland's kind of big, Raheem Mostert missing, it would make me think that he also, like him missing would be bad, but they've proven on Miami in a sense this year that it doesn't matter who their running back is. And Achane, who is listed here, toe and ribs, but he was a full practice Friday. He's fine. If you have him or Mostert, you're gonna have a run game, unless they're really limited by their injury. But yeah, this game overall, I think the Dolphins are a little bit more banged up than the Chiefs are at this point. But moving on, we have Pittsburgh and Buffalo. So for the Bills, I mean, they list Josh Allen here right at the top, funny enough, but he was a full all week. He has that neck injury he's been dealing with. Who knows how much it's been affecting him. He always has seemed to play kind of a risky style of ball. I wouldn't say insanely risky or anything like that, but who knows if that affected why he threw some picks. But then again, him and Tua both did it. I mean, it was so odd last week. They have Gabe Davis, the wide receiver, with his knee injury. He is out. That is kind of a big blow to them. I like Gabe Davis, and he's always kind of one of those secret weapon type players for them that gets open, makes big plays when you need him. Even if he hasn't touched it all game, he's just one of those that he can go from dead to alive in, a blink of an eye, in my opinion. So kind of a big blow for them. Rasul Douglas is questionable. He's got that knee injury. Kind of sucks for him because they traded for him, a third round pick. And then he had, his game of the week a couple weeks ago. And overall, and it's like Collinsworth said it best. Oh, they're back to the drawing board for their for their their cornerbacks. Like, goodness, it is quite insane how many injuries they've had on the Bills. Maybe they're just cursed on the maybe the defensive backside. The only other player I see here that is out is Taylor Rapp. I don't think that's huge here. They did rest Stefon Diggs and Daquan Jones all week. Same with Von Miller. Well, that's kind of strange. They say vet rest, but he was a not practice on Wednesday, but a full on Thursday and Friday. So, Von Miller's going to be ready to go. But otherwise, looking at the rest of this, they have, I mean, like I said, the only questionables they have are Rasul Douglas and then Tyrell Dodson, a linebacker, who's questionable, and he was limited, did not practice, and then limited again. So overall, a pretty healthy Buffalo Bills team. I think that's going to be ready to go, especially after last week. Looking at Pittsburgh, Peterson rest, Patrick Peterson. The only Oh my goodness. I didn't hear about this. The only player that isn't playing is TJ Watt. Wait, goodness gracious. Let me see this. Oh my goodness. So this happened. Oh, this happened on the wait a minute. Oh, this happened during the game. Boy, is that a huge blow. I really, oh my goodness. God, I'm actually really, really sad for, I guess, the Steelers. I didn't realize TJ got injured last week. So they get in, but at the cost of TJ Watt. And of course, I mentioned, with a player like him, and that sort of thing, it's like he can always be a game wrecker, but I think that the Pittsburgh defense is still pretty good. Like, he's not their only guy, but he is the guy, to get after the quarterback and do good things. But I think without him, it's going to be really tough. I think that, him going after Allen, he's probably one of the few guys that it's like is going to make it so that Allen's not going to be able to just get anywhere and just overpower him with his running ability because of how talented Watt is. But God, this is a huge blow. I didn't realize that he had gotten injured last week. I feel like I didn't hear about this, which is kind of crazy with, I guess, all the news, the drama this week of like, I mean, it must be all the coaching that is just overwhelming the media right now. And I'm actually kind of flabbergasted about this. But yeah, huge blow here. Um, no other injuries. No other injuries on this team. No one else is even listed as questionable or doubtful or anything like that. And, they're going to need to play their best game of ball, clearly. I think that their shot is a bit wider than, let's say the other 7th seed, my Packers. Even though the Packers have a good number of injuries, but we've had a good number of injuries all year, to be honest with you. But yeah, they literally say no TJ Watt, but rest of Steelers are healthy. This is going to have to become a game essentially to me where this is going to have to become a game to me where you control the football for you control the football is what I'm thinking, honestly. Um I'm actually kind of flabbergasted. But yeah, they're gonna have to control the ball on Pittsburgh. Really like run the ball a lot, I think, which is just gonna be tough against a Bills defense that looked incredibly stout against the run last week against the Dolphins. But yeah, goodness gracious, I'm really sad for Watt. Another insane season that's marred by the fact that he is probably going to end the season not playing another game. Even if they somehow make it past this round, I don't think it's gonna matter. Looking at the next game, we have Packers Dallas. I mentioned there's a few things. We've got AJ Dillon is, I guess, still doubtful. He missed last game with a stinger, and clearly, Jones is fully healthy. Otherwise, it would be kind of like scary to not have Dillon. but you also have Jair Alexander, who was a do not practice on Thursday and Friday, even though he was able to play last week. He has a shoulder and an ankle injury. Um, and then you have Christian Watson with his hammy, who was limited all 3 days of practice. I'm really hoping he can go. Obviously, last year, his kind of breakout game was against the Cowboys. I'm not saying it can happen the same way again, but I would love to have Watson back. It would, because I think, in all honesty, if you're playing against the Cowboys, excuse me, and you're playing against Deron Bland and Stephon Gilmore, who Stephon Gilmore, I think, is, he's a little banged up as well. But uh looking at this, they list a lot of guys here, but none of them are really. Let me see. We have Romeo Dobbs, who has been in every game this year, kind of had less of an impact than I'd liked him to have had, especially with Watson not playing that much. But he has his chest injury, was limited in practice all week. You do have Alan Jenkins on here, who was limited Wednesday, didn't practice on Thursday. I'm sure that was kind of a contingency to see, like, oh, we need to make sure that his knee is ready to go. And he was limited on Friday, so I'm assuming he'll be a full go. Aaron Jones has a knee and a finger injury, but he was limited all week. But I'm sure they're kind of just taking it easy on him. He is one of the oldest on the Packers at 29. I can't believe I'm saying that. But looking at, the rest of the team, Musgrave, who only got one catch last week, and I think it was more. And he did say that I think that it was more, oh, he got it. He's like, I got my catch. I got hit. I felt fine afterward, and it's like he did have that kidney laceration and they list him on here for that, but he was a full practice all 3 days. So he will make his playoff debut. The only other thing that I see here that is maybe worth noting, let me see. I don't really think there's much. There's really nothing else to me that is worth noting. One other thing, I guess, on the recovery kind of end of it is that Emmanuel Wilson had been kind of questionable with his injury that he had been dealing with for weeks, where it's like the Packers ended up re-signing Patrick Taylor because it was AJ Dillon then Taylor, and now it's AJ Dillon, and Aaron Jones and Patrick Taylor are kind of the backs. But with Emmanuel Wilson coming back, he's kind of a guy that obviously made the team through how he played in the preseason. And I was really happy about him, but he obviously has dealt through injuries throughout the season as well. And hasn't played as much because of that. Like you said, he was on IR, and that sort of thing. But the Packers list a ton of guys here, but none worth, I think, being insanely noteworthy. I think the other one that I would like to mention about a guy coming back possibly is Isaiah McDuffie. Obviously, you have Devondre Campbell and then Quay Walker are your starters. But Isaiah McDuffie was playing pretty well. And you just never know with Devondre Campbell's kind of injury history if Isaiah McDuffie will have to come in. But I think for the most part, the Packers have a lot of listings here, but it's kind of a smokescreen to me. And we've kind of had a lot of listings all year where some of them are more notable than others, but none of them really seem like out of the ordinary, I guess. Going to Dallas, they do have Stephon Gilmore on here with a shoulder injury where he did not practice on Wednesday, and then on Thursday he was a limited practice. Obviously on Friday they haven't listed him here, what they've done yet, so it's unspecified what his game status is. I'm assuming he's going to go. They also have Demarcus Lawrence was rest. Zach Martin rest. Um, Jordan Lewis also rest. But the major one that I'd like to note here, I guess, is that they have Tyler Smith, one of their offensive tackles, and he was limited in practice with a foot injury on Wednesday and Thursday. But it seems to me like obviously this is going to be a fully healthy Dallas Cowboys team. I think that Cooks, has been kind of battling an injury, but he's been doing good things for them. Seems to be a very reliable red zone target, even with his height and how short he is. But this is what I'm saying is that the Packers clearly not at full strength, but it's hard to be at this time in the year. But they're gonna need to be playing their best ball regardless of who they have playing to beat a Dallas Cowboys team that doesn't have any significant injuries recently that are gonna affect what they do. But moving on to the next game, we have the Rams in Detroit. I'm kind of assuming here that both of these teams are pretty healthy. I know the Rams uh just don't really, they don't really have like any notable injuries, to be honest, with their team. Looking here, we have, they only have 6 guys listed on their injury report. And Tyler Higbee, one of them, he was limited on Wednesday, Thursday with a shoulder. They're resting Rob Havenstein, otherwise he was a full practice on Thursday. Looking at the rest of these, they have Joe Noteboom, who is listed with a foot injury, and he was a do not practice type of thing. Same with Jordan Fuller, but not really guys that it's gonna break your team. Looking for Detroit, they do have a good amount of injuries or guys that are already listed as out. James Houston, Jerry Jacobs, James Mitchell, and Khalif Raymond. And then let's see, they have a couple of questionables here. They do have Sam Laporta as questionable with his knee injury. I do think he's going to be full to go though. They rested him on Wednesday, Thursday, but then on Friday he was a full practice. So that's big for having him. Amon-Ra. They do list a couple of other notable names on here. They have Taylor Decker, but he was rest, full practice. Graham Glasgow, rest. Frank Ragnow, even though his knee, his back, his toe, he was a do not practice on Wednesday, but Thursday, Friday, full. Jameson Williams, their blazer of a wide receiver, has an ankle injury, but he was full all week. But yeah, there's really not that many like super notable injuries. I feel like most of these guys that are injured for or that are out for Detroit are none of their regular stars that we're used to seeing, and their line is fully healthy. I know that it was kind of suspect when Ragnow wasn't, taking snaps because I believe he finished as the highest PFF graded center in the league because of how good he is. But otherwise, looking for this game to be very clean. That's why I always say that, this is going to be one of those. It's going to be a battle in Detroit. But let's look at the Tampa Bay and Philadelphia injury report. I know they play Monday, so it's kind of one of these things they only start listing on Thursday for this. But looking at this, Baker Mayfield has that ankle and ribs injury that he is suffering from. And he was do not practice today, or I mean on Thursday, sorry. Tristan Wirfs has an illness. He was a do not practice. I'm assuming he's going to be ready to go. He's the kind of guy he's not going to miss the time. And then only 3 other injuries: Josh Hayes, Mike Green, and KJ Britt, whom Mike Green looks like he's going to play. He was a full today. Josh Hayes, limited. KJ Britt did not practice. with a calf injury on a linebacker. Maybe he plays. He isn't even one of their starting linebackers, honestly. So I don't think a huge blow there. Looking at Philadelphia, um, Reed Blankenship on his groin did not practice. AJ Brown on his knee did not practice. Sidney Brown did not practice. And then I guess Jalen Hurts with his finger, I've heard that he's going to play. There's no way that he doesn't, in all honesty. But yeah, Jalen Hurts with his finger, I'm sure he's going to play. Darius Slay, knee injury, but was full practice today. And Devontae Smith, full practice, even though they list him with an ankle injury. DeAndre Swift, apparently sick, but full practice. So, I mean, notable names on this. But the only one that looks, maybe a little bit alarming, but I'm assuming he's going to go, is AJ Brown. Unless his injury is really that bad. Because it would, and I mean, the pressure has to be growing on the Eagles because they get knocked out by the Buccaneers. Yeah, it's going to be kind of to be expected with how they finish their season. But it's going to be embarrassing, and the Philadelphia fans are not going to be happy, to say the least. Like, I wouldn't say there's going to be riots in Philadelphia, but good Lord, those fans are some of the most crazy, passionate fans ever. But that's kind of the injury reports. We really don't have any that are like super, like the worst, I think, injury amongst all of these is obviously to TJ Watt. I feel bad for not knowing. I guess I didn't watch the game. I kind of assumed it would be a doozy of a game, and it was. That went in the favor of the Steelers because the Ravens were resting so many people. It's like they weren't going to they weren't going to be playing that game for any reason. It wasn't going to be like a shootout game or a game like, oh, we have to win. It's our division rival. We don't want to look weak. But it's like nobody was going to discredit the Ravens after this way they've played this season. Excuse me. But I've been kind of blabbering on and on about injuries and all of that, you guys. And if any of you want to voice kind of your opinions, what you think of the matchups, I think we do have, and I've been saying this kind of every week that we have a good batch of games, but I think that most of these are pretty good games. The Philadelphia-Tampa game, I say, because of the way Philadelphia has been playing, and they haven't even been able to contend with bad teams. And, it was really handed to them by the Cardinals. Good Lord. It's like, man, dude, if you weren't panicking before then, you were definitely panicking after then. I think that Cleveland-Houston, while it might not be a close game, I think it'll really show, I guess, what we see in Stroud. And I mean, I don't think it's really going to change our opinions too much about him. I think it's kind of known that he could easily be a top 5 QB in the league in, future years. He may even, I mean, it might be a stretch to say, but he might be a top 5 right now, in all honesty. He played with arguably close to nothing. He reminds me, and I've been kind of thinking of these comparisons, but he reminds me a little bit of my guy Jordan Love. They're both playing with these young cores for their weapons, and who the hell knows? And clearly, even though Houston, it's like they drafted, a couple of these guys and, that sort of thing. And clearly they had some sort of a plan of who they wanted, and I mean, it helps. I think it's very underrated that DeMeco Ryans came from such a winning organization, such as the Niners, and that he brought that culture over and, instantly put them on the map. Maybe not instantly. I think that, at the beginning of part of the season, they were definitely kind of like trying to figure things out. But I don't think it took very long for them to know that Stroud was the guy, for them. And he's going to be in the league for a while. And in all likelihood, to me, can take over that division. Because the way that, J-Law has played, the way that J-Law has played, goodness gracious. I would be worried as a Panthers, Jaguars fans, the other cat. But it's remarkable to me a team like Houston with as high a picks that they had. And granted, they obviously, got a lot for Watson, but they made the most of it. And they really kind of, set themselves ahead, you know, in years. But thinking of these other games, I think it could get interesting between Miami and Kansas City. I think that, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, now that I guess I've discovered that Watt's not playing, where the heck did I miss that headline? I'm like, I think Pittsburgh could still, do well. They're really gonna have to pull it out of their hat. And the defense, obviously, sometimes defenses rally and they're inspired by teammates' injuries, and that they're like, oh, they can be snarky. They can say that, like, yeah, we're ready to, try to prove that we're worthy of being on a TJ Watt led defense type of thing, and that that sort of thing can sometimes inspire players, to do well. And I think the culture in Pittsburgh is still very, very strong. I think that Tomlin is a very smart coach. It's crazy to me that he was on the hot seat. I mean, I do think that there's been some staff moves he's made that are questionable, like Matt Canada. But otherwise, looking at looking at Pittsburgh, it's going to be tough for them. I bet the odds are not in their favor. And then, kind of thinking about Green Bay and Dallas a little bit more, you guys. There have been just some incredible moments, over the stretch. And most of them have been in that stadium. Obviously, now you've got like kind of a brand new team. We haven't played in Dallas in a minute. But well, I guess no, we played there last year and did kind of a surprising comeback win that ultimately, drove us to be one game away from the playoffs last year. But I just don't know what to think, because yeah, there's a few players on the team that kind of remember that offensively, but only really a few. And we'll see how it turns out. I'm really excited. But yeah, if you guys don't really have anything to say, or you don't want to ask me anything, then I think I'm gonna be ready to conclude this edition of Castcast. Obviously, I'll see you guys next Tuesday, because we do have a Monday night game this week. And we'll look these over, discuss what happened, and then we'll look ahead to the divisional weekend, where we're only surprisingly, 4 weeks from the Super Bowl. Essentially, but yeah, I'm really excited about this. So we have this weekend. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. But as always, go Pack Go.